This is David Rockefeller addressing the United Nations dinner. He says, "But the present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be open for long. Already there are powerful forces at work that threaten to destroy all of our hopes, our efforts to erect an enduring structure of global cooperation." So he realizes the urgency. That's why I say not just him, but he has a whole bunch of people working for him. And they're urgent about what they're doing. They aren't sitting on the sideline. They aren't just waiting for something to happen. They're moving forward. In fact, in the LA Times, there was an article where George Bush and these men will be standing at that great pyramid we saw on the back of the dollar bill, December 31st, 1999. And they will be celebrating the New World Order, the globalized government. No more democracy. That's less than 3 years away. You'll know if I was right or if that newspaper article was right or wrong when we find out what happens on December 31st, 1999. However, I believe they're going to try to move that timetable up. I believe that God's going to throw some monkey wrenches in their plans that they have no idea what they are, and they'll act out of urgency and out of fear and out of panic, and they'll try to move it quicker. See, they've been going for this New World Orders way before Adam Weishaupt. Adam Weishaupt was 1776. They're just now ready to bring it in. There's never been a time that they could bring it in. There's never been a time in the nation, in the history of America either, that we would allow 38 million babies to die. So we're primed for judgment. We're primed to allow this to happen to our children and to us. This is another quote by David Rockefeller at the Bilderberg meeting in Germany. Bilderberg is not a group; it's a hotel. There's a group. There are a group of very powerful people in this world. But let me get this. I got to tell you this. I can't go any further because I call them powerful, but they're nothing in my dad's hand. They're nothing compared to him. I usually have a little BB, and I call that the sphere of the earth. And it's about 8,000 miles in diameter, that BB is. And then I have a little Nerf ball. It's yellow, and it's about 105 times bigger because it's 865,000 miles in diameter. So it's a lot bigger than the earth. Now, if you took that earth and put 5.6 billion dots on it, laser dots, that would be us. That would be me and these people like David Rockefeller. And if you took the sun, the scientists will tell you that sun is one of billions of stars within the Milky Way galaxy. It's small to medium size. Then they tell you there's billions of galaxies with billions of stars. You know what my dad does to that universe? He spans it. He goes like this. From the little finger to the thumb, he goes, let me measure the universe. How big are those little laser dots on that little BB? Not so big compared to my dad. So I don't have fear because of who I am. I'm a child of God, and He's my dad. And He's not going to let anything happen to me until He's ready to take me home. When that time comes, I will go home to be with Him, and that's where I'm looking forward to. So we shouldn't have fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power and love and of a sound mind. If we don't have Him as our dad and as our father, I would have fear. I would be afraid. In fact, I'd probably go to find the nearest bar or the nearest fix, and I'd stay totally inebriated away from reality. I sure wouldn't come to some meeting like this, because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You know what truth means? Reality. You guys are going to see reality tonight on the screen. You're going to see what's really happening in America. And that's what Jesus wants. He shares the truth. He is life, too, and I might mention that. He's not death. So I'm not here to say we should go kill some abortion doctors. Absolutely not. God would not kill. He's not for death. He's for life. We should pray for the unborn. We should, if we're called to be sidewalk counselors, we should go counsel these young girls that are afraid when they come there. Their boyfriends have usually deserted them. They don't know which end up is. The society has told them it's all right. That's just a fetal material. You know what fetus means in Latin? An unborn baby. So she goes in there scared to death. And they murder the baby which is inside her. My heart breaks for these young girls. I don't know how many of you people ever read articles about a 17-year-old girl that was afraid. We need to counsel them. We need to be a light to them. We need to be the truth to them. We need to share the truth with them. We no longer need to tell them it's all right to go get rid of that unwanted child. We need to stand up for justice and righteousness, which Jesus stood up for. David Rockefeller said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion almost 40 years." Now you could add on this CBS, ABC, CNN, NBC. All the news media has helped them bring this thing about. He said, "It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government." You see, William Penn said the pen is much mightier than the sword. He knew what it was all about. He knew what brainwashing was all about. He knew if you told the people the same thing enough times, they would finally believe it. He knew if you didn't tell them something and you kept them in the dark, they wouldn't do anything. And that's what they've done to most of the people in America. Now, it isn't, I let them off the hook, because we all have an opportunity to do research. We all have an opportunity to search in and find out if really what's happening for our children's sake is going to happen or not. But many of us are like those soldiers that were afraid that went home in Gideon's army. There's another story I always like to tell. It's about David and Goliath. David stood in the Eli Valley. He came to visit his brothers one day, and they were in the Eli Valley, and the Philistines were lined up on one side of the valley, and the Israeli army was on the other side of the valley. And David looked down there, and every day that uncircumcised Philistine would stand up there, and he'd mock them, and he'd say, "Who's going to challenge me?" Well, they wouldn't not only not send anybody to challenge him, they ran back to their tents and closed the flaps. They were afraid. Fear is the opposite of faith. So David said, "Why are we doing this? Why are we letting this happen?" So his older brother came to David, in fact, said, "You're a proud little boy, David. You go back and take care of your sheep." David said, "I'm not proud. I know who my dad is. And my dad's going to protect me when that time comes." And he will. Should we defend ourselves? That's based on what God has told you to do. That's based on hearing his voice. I believe we all need to hear our shepherd's voice. I believe we all need to stand up for what he's told us to do. We need to have convictions. It's been told to us for a number of years. This book is Tragedy and Hope by a man named Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley was President Clinton's mentor per the 1992 Democratic Convention just after he was nominated as the presidential candidate. He said, "I owe my position to this man, Carroll Quigley." Carroll Quigley was his professor at Georgetown University. Carroll Quigley let us know this information back in 1961. He was putting out more information when he died unexpectedly in 1974. Let's see what he said in this book, Tragedy and Hope. He says, in effect, that it is now too late for the little people to turn back the tide. In a spirit of kindness, he is therefore urging them not to fight the noose which is already around their necks. That's on page 978, 980. On page 1248, he expresses the utmost contempt for the members of the middle class who think they can preserve what he calls their petty, bogus property rights and constitutional privileges. This was our president's mentor at George Washington University. Mikhail Gorbachev, is this thing in Russia, is it all just are they now our newfound friends, or somebody that we should have been friends with while this thing called Cold War was all about? Well, let's see what Mikhail Gorbachev said prior to the breakup of the Iron Curtain. He said, "Gentlemen, comrades, do not be concerned about all you hear about glasnost and perestroika and democracy in the coming years. These are primarily for outward consumption. There will be no significant internal changes within the Soviet Union other than for cosmetic purposes. Our purpose is to disarm the Americans and let them fall asleep." We'll see just how effective they've been, according to this mandate, which he spoke before the Politburo there in Russia. What's he doing now? Well, he happens to have one of the most prime houses on the property in the United States of America. He's at the Presidio in San Francisco. His home overlooks the ocean. It's one of the oldest military bases in the history of America. In 1995, September 27th through October 1st, he held a meeting with all the leaders and anybody that has power in this world, and let's see what their mission was. But he applied. It says up at the top, State of the World Forum was the name of it. At the bottom it says the Gorbachev Foundation. He applied for that foundation 4 months prior to the breakup of the Soviet Union. So he knew exactly that comic act that took place over there in Russia. If you didn't recognize, any time a coup's taken over, you shut the press off. You can't take over. You can't have a coup with the press pointing pictures of people in Red Square. What did we see? Them overturning cars and tanks and everything else. It's like the head of the KGB, the head of the defense, the head of all these men were the Seven Stooges. No, they knew what they were supposed to do and when they were supposed to do it. It was all an act, people. It was all a play that they put on so they could do this thing called dialectic philosophy. Dialectic philosophy is two steps forward, one step back.